once again, I'd like to say, hey, thank you. Thank you for coming and experiencing this day and time with us at the Common Unity Podcast. Once again, my name is Jeffrey Jones. It's a pleasure to have all of you here. I know you could be anywhere doing anything that you want to do right now, but you chose to spend that time with us, and I greatly appreciate it. Don't forget, at the end of the show, you can go to the discussions page on the website and you can put ideas out there to help us be more in tune with what perspectives are held as far as everybody in the community. Um, Today, we're going to be talking with a therapist who helped me out a lot personally. Most of you don't know that at one time I spent 22 years in the military, and that 22 years infantry soldier did a lot of damage to my back, and I held as long as I could, fighting the pain. And finally, I went ahead and said, "Okay, I'll get the surgery that the doctors have been recommending." And I walked in expecting to walk out that evening, and it's been 2 years, and I'm still fighting to walk. But I can say honestly, I've met some great people during this journey, people who have given me the strength to continue on and try and make the best life that I can and fight this and try and get my legs back. One of those people you're going to be interacting with very shortly. He's very dedicated, very professional, and I tell you, he helped me out a lot. I remember seeing him when I was in my room at his facility, and he'd come in the morning, always had a smile on his face, and he could tell those days when I was feeling down, and he reached down and picked me up. So I just like to introduce him. Sterling, can you tell the folks a little something about yourself?
Yes, my name is Sterling Taylor, and I'm from Phoenix Hill, Alabama. I'm an occupational therapist. I've been an occupational therapist approximately about 16, 17 years. I really enjoy the field. What's one of the things that got me interested in doing therapy is I had an injury in high school playing basketball, and I was referred to a local rehab facility here, and that like changed the rest of my life because it opened my eyes up to the side of what other people do to really help and enhance people's in that position, my athletic ability. And in turn, I figured that I can use that to help people, later in life, if I, just switched around from athletics to do it, working with the older population. So I always kept that little nugget in the back of my mind as a potential job I would like to do. Fast forward, when I got out of high school, I looked around for physical therapy. It was introduced to me as physical therapy. Unfortunately, when I was looking for that, I was newly married. Not unfortunate about that part, but I was newly married. But there was no therapy or schools around here where I lived at the time. The nearest one was in Atlanta, Georgia. So, and being newly married, I didn't know. Um, well, I knew that probably wasn't the right move for me at that time, but I always kept searching. And as a matter of fact, my wife, she's a nurse. She's a nurse practitioner now. I delved into that. I looked into nursing because I knew I wanted to work with people. Lo and behold, when she was in nursing school, they brought an occupational therapy program to Columbus State University. The program was through Medical College of Georgia. And she told me about it because they were sharing the building. She told me about it, and I'm like, what is occupational therapy? I mean, because I was introduced to physical therapy, but I didn't know what occupational therapy was. So I did my research, and I came up with, man, this is close enough to physical therapy. I think I can do this. So I did my research some more, and I was currently in school at the time, but I was looking, I think my degree progression was for exercise science. Um, so I decided to change my major into occupational therapy because I likened it to being close enough to physical therapy where I can still help people. Um, so the occupational therapy for y'all, for the people that are not familiar, in my setting, an inpatient rehab setting, we work on or we look at with the evaluation, seeing doing assessment on how well a patient can do with their eating, how well they can do with their grooming, how well they can do with their bathing, how well they can do with their toileting, um, just to name a few things as far as like what we call ADLs, activity or of daily living. We also look at strength and endurance. We look at transfers, like going from the wheelchair to the toilet or from the bed to the wheelchair, and vice versa. So we look at all those components during the evaluation just to see, just to get a baseline to where we need to be at. So I personally try to incorporate the goals that I want to do and have with the patient, um, add those with the goals that the patient may have as well. So, because we have an agenda and the patient has an agenda too. So during that time, we want to show progress to make it to closest as we can to that goal. In my particular setting, the average length of stay is 2 weeks. So you don't have very much time to try to reach that goal that you're trying to get to. Um, so I know I'm jumping ahead, but after leaving my facility, the patient might have like home health therapy, or they might see an occupational therapy or physical therapy, or you may have the choice to have um, outpatient therapy. So the difference is home health therapy, exactly what it sounds like. You have home, you have your therapy within your home. Outpatient therapy is the patient is out of the facility, so they're coming to the facility to have therapy services. Um, so just to jump back to the inpatient rehab facility where I work at, like I was mentioning earlier, you're there for 2 weeks. So like I said, you have a very limited amount of time to try to get the patient from point A to point B. So, and you're incorporating all the things that you know and all the things that you know about the patient and the patient goals and what they want to achieve. So for instance, everybody, I would say the main goal a patient wants to do when they come to rehab facility is the walk. That is like, I hear that like 90% of the time. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there's a lot of times where your body is still healing. Like if you had a stroke, that's where you might have weakness on one side, or you have an amputation of your leg. That's where one of your legs is cut off, and you might have to have a prosthesis after the healing process. You might have a TBI, that's a total brain injury, where you might have swelling on your brain where you lose your memory and cognition. There's a lot of things that can go on with a lot of these different diagnoses that we deal with. So say if a patient can't or don't have the physical capabilities at that time, what you do is like you build them up. You work on the core things in rehab facility is you work on the strengthening part. Okay, the legs may not be strong enough. You work on a lot of standing. You work on a lot of balance. Yeah, you work on a lot of strengthening in the upper body, because a lot of times, well, every time with standing, it may not be this way with every patient, because everybody don't have the arm strength to push themselves up from the chair to the from a sitting position to the standing position. And there's a lot of components to that. For people that's done that for all their life, you don't even think about how easy it is. But when you get with someone that has to relearn this process, you have to teach them in steps back over again, just like almost like a newborn. So for instance, like in a chair, if you want to teach someone how to go from a sitting position to the standing position, you might teach them how to scoot out from the chair. Something again, you may not even think about if you've done this a billion times. So you scoot out to the end of the chair. So you teach them how to position their arms and hand. You teach them how to position their feet. and you petition them how you want them to push their body up. So, like I said, it may have been something that most people that hadn't had an injury billions of times, you have to reteach that and get them to the point where they're comfortable with it. So even if the person can't reach that position, you might want to teach them how to do a safe transfer. Thousands of millions of people probably don't know what a transfer board is. A transfer board is like a piece of equipment in our facility. It can be like a piece of plastic that might be a couple of feet long, or it's made out of wood. So it's like a bridge in between, say, your bed to your wheelchair, and you teach the patient how to put that equipment under their hip, and you get them comfortable with that to where they can slide from the bed to the wheelchair using the strength in their arms. And so that goes back to the strengthening part in the arm. So it's a whole elaborate scheme or process that we go through, or try to teach the patients, where, like I said, it's where if you didn't have these injuries, you would never think about, the things that someone would have to go to just to make it easier for themselves. So like I said, you're building the patient back up so they can learn how to do things that they did many times before, and just teaching them in a different way how to do it again. So going back to the 2-week time frame, is it realistic a lot of times where a patient might accomplish their goals in a 2-week time frame? No. So what do you do in that case? Like I said, it's a process where you're explaining where a patient is at that current time, and trying to get them to a point where they feel comfortable with himself or herself, or teaching and training the family how to deal with a patient going home. So it's not just the physical part of it, it's the educational component as well, because there might be other pieces of devices, like with the transfer board. There might be another device where you might need to help the patient get from point A to point B. If say they don't have the trunk control to be able to control themselves from the board, sitting on the edge of the bed and get into the board and get into the chair, or if there's a high fall risk or a high safety risk, you might want to have to use a Hoyer. And a Hoyer is a device. It just like it sounds. It Hoyers the patient from one place to the other. So in this case, we might use that to Hoyer the patient from the bed to the chair. And these are some of the things that we would teach the patient and the family members how to do, being comfortable going home. Some other devices we might use, especially with occupational therapy, if a patient can't bathe or dress themselves, there's different devices. For instance, for like lower body dressing, there's a device that's called a reacher. Some people call it a sock aid. And if you can think about, it's probably about 2 feet long, like a reacher is, and it has a trigger on there, and it closes on the other end. So that device, you can use that to pick things up off the floor. You can use that device to pick your pants up off the floor. You can use that device to help train the patient how to do their lower body dressing, with some assistance if needed. And you teach the family how to use that device as well. That's for the pants or shorts. There's a device that's called a sock aid you might want to use to help don, or what don is another word for putting on a piece of clothing, and doffing. I mean, I know this is getting ahead of myself, but don and doffing is like putting on and taking off clothing. So you might use a sock aid to use that device to help put the socks on. So you're training the family or patient on that. There are other devices, like if you want to get on a toilet and say your commode is real short or real low, because a lot of the home, especially a lot of the older homes, don't have handicap accessible toilets.
Right.
So, and they sit a lot lower. So in that case, we might order or train the patient how to use a bedside commode chair, and that comes in 2 or 3 different varieties. Especially if you had a patient that can't completely stand right now, you would get a commode chair, but you would use a drop arm commode chair where the arm drops down, so it makes room for that same sliding board I was talking about earlier, and you would use that sliding board as a bridge from the wheelchair to the commode chair. So there are other things that you can use. I mean, there are a plethora of things that you can use, but some of the main things that we use in order for the patients are wheelchairs, and that's a mode of transportation to get to from point A to point B. And that's another thing, or another reason why you might want to have build up your strength and endurance in your arms and your legs, because that's a good exercise to prepare yourself or move yourself from point A to point B to get around in the house or the hospital or anywhere else. You have a rolling walker. That's a piece of device where you put your hands on and you use it to help balance yourself. And most of the time it comes with 2 wheels. That's the kind that we use at the hospital. And it helps to give it support when you're walking to get from point A to point B. Also, there's a rollator. It has 4 wheels. It's a little bit more quicker, and you have to be a little bit more agile to use that, but it has brakes on there too. So our higher level patients can use that. I think I mentioned the bedside commode, the drop arm commode. I mentioned the Hoyer. Those are some of the main things we use at my facility to help patients get back on board. From an occupational therapy standpoint, I mentioned about the reacher or the grabber, the sock aid. Also, there are some other things that we use, like a long handle sponge that you can use to teach where someone that has a hip surgery, for instance. Like I said, there's a multitude of a bunch of diagnoses that we deal with in the hospital. So for someone that had a hip surgery, they have limitations as far as like they can't bend so far. They have hip precautions, and you have to honor your hip precautions. So in that case, you teach the family how to do your dressing, how to do your bathing, how to do some of these things that the family member or loved one was doing before. Before the surgery, you teach them and tell them how to do it safely using the adaptive equipment. And that's, like I was saying, that's with the reacher, that's with the grabber, that's with the sock aid, that's with the long handle sponge.
I really want the audience to take into account, and I just want to share this with you folks. I want you to think about what we call the 4th industrial revolution, 4IR. 4IR is the interconnectedness between robotics, artificial intelligence, and systems with computers that are taking more and more jobs every day. One of the things that I saw, and it amazed me that they're getting ready to do this, but they've already tested it out, and they said with great success. What you're going to start seeing shortly is 18-wheelers without drivers. They've already instituted the artificial intelligence and the GPS together so that these trucks can be on the road and they don't even have to be driven. So unlike what we have now where, truck drivers have to sleep ever so often before they can get back on the road to stay alert, it won't be like that. These trucks will run 24/7. I don't know how comfortable you are with that. I'm really not, but I'm not the person who's going to be in charge. So this is something that's getting ready to happen. When you look at most jobs now can be replaced by robotics, by computers, artificial intelligence, most jobs. But when you get into jobs like the one that Sterling is talking about, the one that Sterling is trying to teach us about today, that's not going to happen. It has to be a person, people that evaluate, touch, guide an individual who has injuries that they're trying to overcome. So for those of you who might be thinking about a career path for the future, physical or occupational therapy will always be needed. It will always be needed. And as the population gets older, which it has, and is getting older every day, there'll be even more in need. So I want everybody to please think about that. And I'm going to ask Sterling to explain to us, um, if you were a high school student right now, what would be some of the things that you might look for in order to prepare yourself for this type of job? Um, Sterling, can you answer that question for me?
Yeah, I would, if you're in high school, if you have any programs that does anything with health, I would get, I would familiarize myself with that. I would do a lot of research on my own because there's a lot of things that's out there that might be hidden. My dad always told me if you want to hide something from somebody, you put it in a book. So you do your research, and you prepare yourself for for the therapy type job. Shadowing, if you have the ability to go to a facility and shadow an occupational therapist, a physical therapy, or a speech therapist, I would say do that. And as a matter of fact, to get in some of these programs, you have to have a certain amount of shadowing hours anyway to be to be to be a therapist, or to get into a therapy program. Or if you're not ready for shadowing and you feel like you still like helping people, I would say try to get into the workforce as far as like being a rehab tech or a nursing tech. Just being a part of the hospital, just being familiar with the things that other people do in a hospital, and you can build your skills up like that as well. So just be very um keeping keeping your head in the books, doing a lot of research, just preparing yourself for what can be, shadowing if the opportunity presents itself, asking tons and tons of questions. There's no stupid question, because if you want to know something, you're passionate about it, you're going to ask these questions to try to educate yourself a little bit more, better. So I would say those are the main things you can do. Just knowledge, being knowledgeable about the situation or the anything, not just therapy or anything else. Doing a ton of research on these things that you might want to be, therapy or any other thing. Doing some shadowing or getting a job related to uh, the things that you might want to do, and asking a ton of questions. There's no dumb questions, especially about a field that you might be passionate about or you had questions about and you're not for sure, because that's how you you build your knowledge base and your intelligence when you ask these questions, and just so you can know for future reference.
Outstanding. Outstanding. So we need to get started early in high school. And that way, by the time we graduate, not only will we have some connections, so when those programs are made available, those special programs, folks will know who we are, but we'll have some experience.
Exactly.
I think that's pretty doggone good. Um, when when you first became a certified therapist, did you feel intimidated at all?
Did I? Very much so, because even as a student, um, the thing is they teach you a little about everything. You don't specialize in anything, and I'm imagining it's like that with a lot of other jobs too, because you do your field work. And say I did my field work, in one of my field works I did with pediatrics, and then another field work I did was in a nursing home. And then my first job was a rehab facility like I'm in now. So I was intimidated mainly because I never worked in a position or a job like I am now. I didn't have the training. I knew what it was about, but I didn't know exactly all the details. And I was intimidated about about the number of therapists that we had there, because you never know about your skills, because you think somebody's always looking at you and your skills, how you're treating somebody. But that goes back to where I was saying earlier, you have to educate yourself, you have to be resourceful. I mean, there's no dumb question. So if there's something that you don't know, go to a colleague and say, okay, how do you do this? Or or if you're not comfortable, just pull them aside at lunch, or in one of the back rooms or something. And we have that openness at my job when we have the new grads that come in that's not comfortable with us. You just try to put that person under your wing and bring them along until they feel comfortable. um like in my setting, like I was saying earlier, it's very intimidating because you got so many therapists there. For instance, they're like 9 to 10 OTs there a day, 9 to 10 PTs there a day. And you're almost, it's like a production. It's almost like assembly line. You have to see 6 patients a day. You have to see them in like between 8 to 3 or 4 o'clock. And you're dealing with a lot of different other things. You're dealing with your family education. You're dealing with sickness. You're dealing with patients that can't, that they're trying to duck and dodge therapy. So you're dealing with a lot of different things, but over the course of time, you build those different skills up. So I would say, not just with therapy or any other job, just stick with it. You'll, just like with anything, it's like when you first rode a bike. I don't think nobody rides a bike perfectly when they get on there. You're gonna fall a couple times. I think skating is another perfect example. When you first skate, you're gonna take some bumps and bruises. The same thing is like a new job or a new profession. The same thing applies. So when you get into a profession, just keep your feet grounded, be resourceful, ask ton of questions, and just stick with it. And if you feel like you fail, you fail forward. So and what I mean by that, there's no perfect situation. You're gonna have falls, you're gonna have mistakes. You just pick yourself up, you learn from that mistake, and you keep going. So the likelihood of you doing the same mistake again is unlikely. So that's how you learn. It's a whole process, not just with therapy, any job. But yes, in short, I was very intimidated by my job. That was when I was a new grad, but now I got 16, 17 years on my belt, and I can do it in my sleep. It just comes with time and experience, like a fine wine now.
That is excellent, man. That is an excellent way to explain it. I I noticed that your facility, though, they were very professional. They were very friendly. They would do anything they could to help the patients. And I was amazed at how well it operated, as well-oiled machine. And I had to laugh though, because it was kind of funny. I did observe some of those people you were talking about who, for some reason, they know they're there for a reason, but it seems like they just don't want to participate, and
Exactly.
that's got to be difficult when you get that.
Yes. So like I said, over time you develop your skills. Now there are some people, I think there's some cases and people where the family wants it more than the patient.
Hmm.
And you can't force a patient to do anything, but that's where you use your therapeutic self and try to educate them on the benefits of therapy, how would it benefit themselves, and how it would benefit the loved ones on not hurting themselves, on instance how to do a transfer. Because you don't want it, sometimes when you explain like that, you might get a little bit more buy-in when you explain it, or you don't want your family to hurt yourself picking up on you and tugging on you, or trying to roll you in the bed to cling you, and that this and that. So, and going back on my facility, man, I tell everybody this, and I'm sure every other facility feels the same way. I would put my facility up against any other therapist facility out there, because I think we have excellent therapists. We all 100% get along. We all 100% love one another. There's not one thing one wouldn't do for the other. And when you have that type of love and admiration for each other, and you don't want to see that other person do fail or do bad, I think it makes for a great working environment. And everybody that come to my facility says that, like, man, y'all get along, y'all laugh, y'all play, but you get the job done. And we have excellent outcomes, excellent um excellent reviews. So I mean, and a lot of times you can't make everybody happy, but I would say for the most part, we have an excellent therapy staff. It's the friendship and the admiration that we have for one another that I think makes us so good, and we all get along and we all love one another. So I think that's kind of like what you seen when you were there. You seen how well we gel and how well we work together. And I have the utmost confidence, if you were working with me versus one of my coworkers, you would have still got the same excellent care. Because like I said, we all work that good together. We all work good in a tandem.
I'll tell you, between your facility, the Shepherd Center in Atlanta, and the FDR facility out there by Manchester, um, three great places. Each one helped me in their own way, and I moved from being a quadriplegic to a paraplegic. And tomorrow, for the first time, I will drive on my own for the first time in over 2.5 years.
Man, that's
Um,
outstanding.
Once I became a paraplegic, I was able to take the driver's test with hand controls. I'll have a vehicle delivered here tomorrow with hand controls, and best believe I'm going to test it out.
Good for you.
But yeah, I appreciate all that hard work and effort y'all put in there to help me progress like I did. I remember a time when I could barely hold a spoon in one hand, and the other hand was not operating at all. And to now have full use of my upper body like this, it's amazing. So we're just going to continue to strive, and I thank you, and I thank the other folks at your facility who work with me, and y'all stay off my Florida State, buddy, because this year we coming for it. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And he know we coming for it this year now. So I'd like to say thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Taylor, for taking this time to blend with our audience and help us see some of the ways that we can grow into the community, find a vocation, a career that would be rewarding in more ways than one. And I just can't say thank you enough.
You're welcome anytime.
Well, I tell you what, folks, it's been a great half hour. I hate to leave you so soon, but Mr. Taylor has some things he needs to take care of tomorrow, and you enjoy yourself while you're doing that, Mr. Taylor. And we're going to have to cut you loose and say thank you, one and all, for coming and enjoying the Common Unity podcast. Bye, all.